Hey everyone, and welcome to Boston Auto Blog, and welcome to my summer and fall project, which is my 2019 Volkswagen GTI Rabbit Edition that I have owned for almost 2 years to the day. I've also put on over 26,000 miles, and I think now is the right time to personalize it, modify it, and make it my own. And I think going with the cold air intake was probably the best decision to go with, just because it's an easy install and it's just one way to get your feet wet when it comes to modifying your GTI or other MQB platform cars. And when it comes to this being on the channel, I've been filming a lot of reviews lately, and it feels more like work rather than a hobby. I want to bring that hobby feel back, have some fun with friends, make some great videos, and that's exactly why I made this decision, because I think some people would say, well, looking at the used car market, you could sell this for a good price and get something different. But I love this car too much. There's not a lot on the market right now that I'd be willing to trade up for, and I think modifying it and just enjoying this car now more than ever is the right decision. Before I go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to the guys at USP Motorsports. They're not sponsoring this video. I am not sponsored by them. However, this cold air intake is hot on the market right now. In fact, some tuning companies don't have them in stock until mid to late July, and I was kind of like freaking out. I'm thinking, great. I decided to modify the car, and I have to wait until mid to late July. That would have been horrible, but these guys were able to deliver it to me by June 13th, and I'm very happy. So I'll leave their link in the description below. They should have them in stock still, and definitely check them out. So starting off with the install process, it's actually a very easy mod to do. In fact, I think this is one of the best first mods you can do with your Volkswagen GTI, just to get your confidence up and really to give you that motivation of doing more stuff to your GTI. Now, I had a few friends help me out with this install, and it took us about an hour period of time, just because I was trying to film B-roll footage, but I was also trying to create that install video for you guys. But I do think that if you are by yourself or with a friend, you can get this done in about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, the hardest part was actually getting access to the 7mm clamp that's on the stock pipe. And it was not in a convenient location for me. And it took us about maybe 5 to 10 minutes of time. But it wasn't too bad at all. Once we got that loosened up, the whole intake came out pretty easily. And I do recommend doing it all in one shot. Don't remove the box first and then the pipe. Just do it all in one removal process. It's very easy to do so. Now, one of the reasons why I did go with the open box air intake is that not only is it easier to install, but the process and the steps are easier as well. And what I mean by that is you probably noticed that part of the stock air intake system is still installed on this GTI, and that's one of the reasons why I went with the open box design. So the coolant line doesn't need to be rerouted. I don't even need to touch it, really. And I've watched so many install videos where the coolant is being spilled all over the engine bay as they're trying to put on that new line. And to me, it just makes the whole install process a bit more difficult than it has to be. So if you're looking for simplicity with your install, go with the open box design over the closed box design. And also, I just think it makes it look a bit more cleaner as well. Now, another reason why I'm making this video is because with the inlet pipe, make sure you place it where you have enough room between the brake fluid box and the inlet pipe itself. So as you're going to notice in this next clip, I did notice something wrong after I installed this intake. There's a vibration though coming from my acceleration.
Oh, dude, he loves it. I got that on camera.
There's a weird vibration though when I'm accelerating. So I checked the forums, and sure enough, the inlet pipe was rubbing up against the brake fluid box, and that's why I was getting those vibrations. So if you are experiencing that, most likely it is vibrating against something in your engine bay. Just make sure you have enough room. So we readjusted it after that quick test drive, and now there's plenty of room. I'm not noticing any vibrations at all. Now, also part of the install process that I want to bring up, you're probably not going to have this issue, but if you do, just don't worry about it as much, is the grommet situation. So this cold air intake sits on 3 grommets, which the stock intake did as well. However, trying to put this on the 3 grommets was a bit of a pain. So the right grommet, which I'm touching right now, did come out of place. It did pop out. Now, I didn't notice anything different. It didn't rattle in the engine bay at all, so you don't need to worry about that. But I was a bit concerned about that because I want this to be in place. I want to have that peace of mind. Now, the day of installation, we had nothing but problems trying to get this cold air intake on the grommet in the back. So we would have it on the right, but not on the back. So play around with it, make sure it sits on the grommets properly, but even if it does pop out, it's not going to be moving around at all. So when it comes to the design of it, I absolutely love it. I love the carbon fiber inlet pipe. Definitely worth paying the $150 for. Because I had friends who were like, you can't go with the stock inlet pipe. It just won't look right with the carbon fiber. And I'm glad I listened to them because the whole intake system looks fantastic. Now, with the cone, it is massive. It is huge. When I open up the hood, everyone is drawn to that. So when it comes to the look of this air intake, I definitely give it an A+. And I think it looks better than the closed box air intake. And then getting back to the install process, the closed box intake does seem to be a bit more difficult to install. So I think that if you're looking for your first ever mod, you want something that's very easy to do, that also looks good as well, go with the open box air intake. I think that's why a lot of people are going with that right now, just because it is easier. You don't need to buy the extra coolant line, and you can leave part of the stock air intake system on your GTI. Now is the most important part. How does the APR cold air intake compare to stock, and is it worth paying around $500? Well, let's find out. Wow.
Sounds a little meaner. Sounds good.
Now for performance, do I notice much of a difference over the stock intake? And I am not going to be one of these guys that say that, oh, I know it's a 5 to 10 horsepower increase. But what I will say though is that when it comes to accelerations, it's far smoother than it was before. And you notice that the engine is getting much more air. So from that standpoint, yeah, I am noticing a difference. I'm not going to put this on a dyno and see how much horsepower I'm getting over the stock intake, but whether it's off the line or even on the highway, the accelerations are smoother and the car is breathing better. So for me, when I'm looking at spending around $500, at least I have that. So it's not just the sound, but I do notice that this car, even on hotter days, drives better for sure. For the sound though, this spools all day, every day. It's incredible. Now this is why I went with the open box air intake, because I wanted to have that sound over the closed box. The closed box, I watched on videos, I'm like, that doesn't sound any different than the regular intake. So that's why I went open box. I want sound. I want this car to sound better. I don't want it to sound like a vacuum anymore. But this begins the process of me slowly going down the rabbit hole of modifications, because now I want to put on an exhaust. I want to have a nice sounding GTI, and that has been financially probably not the best decision for me, but I definitely like the sound of the car. Everyone can hear it now, even when I pull into events. When I accelerate just a little harder and I want to get that air intake, everyone's like, wow, it sounds good. So from a sound aspect, I think it's definitely worth the price. So in closing, do I recommend going with this cold air intake system over the closed box design? And is it worth the $500 of investment? Well, starting off with the installation process, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes of time. You don't need a lot of tools to install it. Also, because of the design, you don't need to reroute the coolant line. And that right there is why I went with the open air box design. Just because I've watched all the YouTube videos and you see the coolant being spilled all over the engine bay. And I think as someone who is getting into modifications for the first time, that does create some hesitancy. I think it makes you a bit nervous where you're like, do I really want to deal with that? Do I really want to touch my car? And with the open air box design, you at least have that motivation and that confidence where it's going to be very easy to do. And then when it comes to that sound, man, I think it's totally worth it over the closed box design, because the closed box design does kind of drown out the sound. And that's what you're going for with the cold air intake. I don't necessarily think you're going for the performance, because you're not going to notice much of a difference when it comes to that. So even if there is a 5 horsepower increase, you're not even going to notice that difference. It's just not going to be something that I think is worth it when it comes to performance. I would just say go with a tune and call it a day. But getting to that performance though, the air is definitely a lot more air getting to the engine. It's breathing better. So when you are accelerating, the accelerations are smoother, even on hotter days. You don't really feel like the engine is holding back a bit. Because I think with the stock intake system, you certainly felt as though that it just wasn't performing as well as it could. And I think when it comes to how it performs now, it certainly is motivating me to get a tune and to get a exhaust. It leads you down the road of modifications and the rabbit hole of really building out your GTI. So I think when it comes to the performance aspect and the sound, it's really providing enough where you're like, yeah, it totally was worth the $500 of investment. But also I love the carbon fiber as well. The carbon fiber looks great under the hood, draws so much attention, and I just think that it totally is worth the time and effort, especially where you don't need to worry about removing all of the stock air intake system. So you can leave that box there where it has the clamps for the coolant line, and that's why I think that over the closed box system, the open air box design is a lot better. Also, it's cheaper a little bit, and that's why I think a lot of Mark 7 and Mark 7.5 GTI owners have really bought into the system where you really can't find them on the market. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. I will be creating a playlist for the GTI when I start doing more modifications. That way you can follow along and maybe get some inspiration with what I'm doing with my GTI. So hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and thanks so much for watching.